And what technology has allowed us to do, and I feel is the important thing, is it's taken away the repetitive sort of task-based processes that the people would have to do. And it's allowed, I firmly believe that payroll is a customer service industry, and it's allowed payroll professionals to develop those softer skills to be able to have the value-add conversations with employees, with colleagues, with partners within the business. And payroll holds so much data about an organization, and most organizations, payroll will be, the majority of the costs of that organization. So It allows us to use the data and take that up to the exec level to say, here's what payroll's telling us, rather than just being a reactive processing force.
Welcome to the Payroll Podcast with your host, Nick Day. Find out what it takes to truly discover what it takes to elevate your career within payroll as we meet with the industry leaders who are shaping the industry for tomorrow.
Hello and welcome back to the Payroll Podcast. Of course, we are welcoming payroll listeners from across the globe. And today I am bringing you an absolutely cracking guest to the show. But before I reveal to you who he is, let me introduce myself. My name is Nick Day, CEO of JJ Recruitment, a specialist payroll recruitment firm. And I'm also the host of this wonderful payroll podcast, which you can find on iTunes, Spotify, and of course on our very own website, jjrecruitment.com, as well as across all other major podcast channels. So if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Please share it with all your payroll friends. Your support is very much appreciated. We want to bring this podcast to the payroll masses. So without further ado, let me tell you about today's guest, because I'm delighted to be joined by Brian Sparling, Senior Manager for Global Operations at Ceridian. Now, I've known Brian for over 15 years. He's one of the most accomplished payroll professionals anyone, anywhere across the globe is ever likely to find or meet. He's a Chartered and Diploma qualified member of the CIPP. He's been named as one of the top 50 reward leaders in the knowledge and professional services in both 2019 and 2020. He's in the Reward 300 alongside myself. Brian, I'm going to let you do the rest of the introduction, but welcome to the Payroll Podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Nick. Very good. And what a fantastic welcome and introduction. Thank you for that.
My pleasure. I've been looking forward to having you on the show for so long, as you know, but I know all about you. I know about what you're all about and how long and all your experience you've got. But let's jump in, if we can, with you just giving our listeners a bit of a short introduction regarding your own payroll journey, as well as perhaps your current role and responsibilities at Ceridian.
Absolutely. So like 98% of people who are in payroll, I fell into the job working in payroll. I was working in an organization. The person who did payroll left. I ended up taking over their responsibilities and grew on from there. I've been very lucky to work for some fantastic organizations throughout my payroll career. I've worked for BSkyB, TSB Bank, Weatherspoons, and now working for Ceridian. So I've kind of crossed the line from operational payroll in working in industry to now working as a payroll service provider. So know both sides of the fence in payroll, and really been with Ceridian for 3.5 years. There's been a lot of fantastic growth during that time. We've grown in the UK from having one outsourced payroll customer in the UK. We're now running 19 different customers across UK and Ireland. So it's been a fantastic story for us in the UK over the last 3.5 years.
Fantastic. We've seen an awful lot change, of course, over the course of 2020, the pandemic. Now, 2021, it feels like everyone is after some kind of transformation. Everyone's looking to get their businesses ready for the future of work. We're certainly seeing that as a recruitment firm supporting those global transformations. But as someone working within the heartbeat of payroll innovation and change at Ceridian, I'd love to know about some of the major trends you're seeing right now from a global provider perspective. So what are you seeing in the market? How have you seen the market really shift post-pandemic?
What we're seeing is people are really wanting that global single view. They want to have a system where they can log in and see a one-stop shop for all of their global needs, rather than having a fractured landscape to look at different systems, speak to different people. They want to have one point of contact. They want to be able to run global reports and get everything back at once. And that's where we, at Ceridian can help with Dayforce and our solution, but it's something that we see as the real driver, on a technical basis across the global payroll landscape.
Sure. I know the Dayforce product is something we're going to get into a little bit more detail in just a minute, because you've got a lot of on-demand pay solutions, which is something I really want to get into nitty-gritty with. Before we get there, something I found on your Ceridian website stated that and you've written this here, that it takes smart technology to outsmart a changing world, which I thought was a great strapline you've got on your website. Can you tell me more about then how payroll technology innovations that you're involved in with Ceridian, but which technologies, should I say, are having the greatest positive impact in the world of payroll today, excluding pay on demand? We're going to get to that in some detail. What are the other kind of innovations you're seeing that are really influencing the way that people are now processing global payroll?
So what we are seeing certainly from a Ceridian perspective is the way our system works. And I know you've spoken to David Ossip, our CEO and chairman in the past, about his disruptive view to change the world of payroll and break away from the payroll cycle, which, on demand is a huge part of. But the system that we use, where we have the one database, one single engine and continuous payroll calculations, is really helping us and our customers move away from the traditional payroll outsource model of a black box and 1 week of doing a lot of work. David calls it the busy work. So cutting down on that real frantic period of payroll checking, payroll reconciliation, to being able to do that throughout the whole pay period and take the peaks and troughs away from payroll processing. From
your perspective then, Brian, because you've been in this industry for a long time, you've seen it change. I don't know how manual it was when you first started. I know when I first started in payroll recruitment, we were looking at systems which were very much Excel-based, or the likes of Kalamazoo, or they were just completely manual. During that period of time where you've seen technology advance and evolve, there's always been a slight fear of change within the payroll community. New technology may replace us. New technology might make our roles redundant, or whatever it might be. But presumably, with where you are now in such an esteemed role with such a great business like Ceridian, you've obviously been able to benefit from some of the changes that have come in. But how does the payroll world then differ now to how it was when you first started? And why should we be excited about the future? Why should we embrace what's to come rather than be, I guess, resistant to it based on your experiences to date?
So I think, and I haven't been in payroll as long as some of my colleagues seem to think I worked on an abacus when I first worked in payroll. But no, I remember working in my first payroll jobs and printing out pay slips and, things like that. And it's all changed. And what technology has allowed us to do, and I feel is the important thing, is it's taken away the repetitive sort of task-based processes that the people would have to do. And it's allowed, I firmly believe that payroll is a customer service industry, and it's allowed payroll professionals to develop those softer skills to be able to have the value add conversations with employees, with colleagues, with partners within the business. And payroll holds so much data about an organization, and most organizations, payroll will be, the majority of the costs of that organization. So It allows us to use the data and take that up to the exec level to say, here's what payroll's telling us, rather than just being a reactive processing force. I think there's a lot of scope for that to change as well. Wendy Muirhead, one of our fantastic salespeople within the organization, talks about she wants to see at the board level a chief payroll officer. And I think, that sounds like a fantastic thing to aim for as a profession, to know that, we're not having to concentrate on the manual repetitive tasks, and we can take what we do and make it much more important.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think Wendy's onto something there. Certainly the rise of the payroll director, we're seeing that come to fruition now. Maybe it's, as you say, a chief payroll officer within businesses, and certainly that customer-centric element. I mean, I've worked alongside and with Ceridian. It's such a customer-centric business that you're absolutely right there. It's, as you say, it's an expensive function, but it's a critical one, because if you get payroll wrong, you're going to have attrition within your business. People are going to leave. People are going to, be... morale is going to be affected if payroll isn't correct. It's such a sensitive and important thing for individuals that it has to be customer focused. And it's great to hear Ceridian have the customer at the core of everything that you do. Certainly the way that I've worked with you, it's always what's come across. Aside from that customer centric piece though, how else do you think Ceridian really stand out from the crowd? Is it through tech? What other innovations are there that really help elevate Ceridian amongst what is quite a noisy marketplace at the minute, certainly post-pandemic with all the different types of technology we're seeing in new suppliers? But what really elevates Ceridian?
For us, I think first and foremost, we see ourselves as a technology company. We're there to produce new and innovative technology to try and, like I said, break down the payroll cycle, make everything work in conjunction with each other. It's a single system, like I've said, it's a single payroll engine. You can see your payroll calculation on an ongoing basis. It's about, I think really for Ceridian, it is about developing the tech and trying to break down the markets with the tech that we offer, and then expanding globally with it across where we offer native payroll.
Sure. Now, something within that innovative tech that I want to talk about today is your on-demand payroll services. There's been a huge amount of discussion about payroll on demand within the payroll community generally. Obviously, it's a service that Ceridian are already offering global clients, particularly in the US and Canada. Ceridian offer what I've seen is something called the payroll software that is continuously calculating throughout the pay period. It's empowering teams to access and audit data continuously throughout the pay cycle instead of having to wait until pay period closes, which is still relatively new as a concept, I think, here in the UK. But I'd love it, Brian, if you could tell me more about the pay on demand services Ceridian offer. Perhaps as well, tell us a little bit more about some of the different ways people can get paid through a pay on demand service.
Sure. I mean, there are pay on demand services in the market now. They're available in the UK, and the majority of those will work on an estimation of pay and an advance function. What we offer in Dayforce, and as you said, we've been live in the US for a couple of years. We launched in Canada earlier this year, and we've seen great uptake for Dayforce Wallet and Ceridian OnDemand Pay. But what it gives you is a true gross to net calculation at any point in the pay cycle, and gives you the ability to draw down your net pay at that point, and it produces a pay slip at that point, and then completes all of the relevant tax filings, any payments that need to do. So it's fully compliant with any regulations in the territory that we're in. But it's tied to the whole notion of the single system and the single calculation, because it's the payroll engine is linked very closely with our WFM or time and attendance data. So as soon as someone has clocked a shift, as soon as you've clocked out, you can have a look at your Dayforce app on your phone, see how much you've been paid for that shift, see your gross pay, see your net breakdown. And if you are an on-demand customer, you can get those wages paid straight to your Dayforce wallet, which is like any virtual payment app. Or in the US, we have a physical payment card, the MasterCard, that you can then have your funds loaded to as well. So it's not an estimation, it's not a drawdown of theoretical pay, it's payment of your net pay at the point you've earned it.
Fantastic. So in the UK, as you said, there are some solutions already existing in the UK. We've featured some of these suppliers before on the Payroll Podcast. So do have a look back at previous episodes if you're interested in finding out more. In particular, of course, the episode with David Ossip, who talks about the Dayforce wallet in some detail. It's a really fascinating episode, so please do check that out. But what do you see as the benefits then in the UK, but obviously further afield as well, that pay on demand can have on both employees and employers? And is there a real appetite for it in the UK?
So I think in terms of appetite, we know that speaking to some of our current customers that they have a massive appetite for this in the UK. If we look at the US, it's slightly different. The US has a much more, they tend not to pay employees monthly. It's either semi-monthly or bi-weekly. Sure. And we've even found that in the US, where our customers have a weekly pay cycle, they still have massive uptake of Dayforce Wallet and On-Demand Pay, because their employees see that flexibility to be able to allow them to access money there and then. But we know from speaking to our customers, that, especially in some certain sectors, retail especially, that they're massively keen for us to get this into the UK market and working. If you think about benefits, the benefits for the employee are, they can get paid at any point that they need the money throughout the pay cycle. Using Dayforce Wallet and on-demand pay, there's no fees to the employee. There's no fees to the employer either. It's cost-free based on using Dayforce Payroll and Dayforce Time and Attendance system. And it gives the employee an easier way to manage their money. We know that, financial wellness is a big issue for a lot of people, currently globally, not just in the UK. And
sure.
We, in the UK, I think research has shown that about 70% of employees will rely on some sort of credit facilities in between paydays. So we hope that with the launch of this, it helps increase the financial wellness of employees, because they can manage their money slightly easier as well.
For sure.
And we've found from the States, for the employer as well, it's helping to reduce turnover and attrition, we've seen from our customers an average of about 42% lower turnover rates in customers that are offering Dayforce Wallet and On-Demand Pay. And it's actually helping in the war of attrition for new talent at the moment. It's you'll know yourself, Nick, it's becoming very difficult to attract people because the talent is there, but lots of people are fighting for them. And we've seen where we have customers who offer on-demand pay, it's being mentioned in job adverts, and it's seen as a real key driver to get people in, giving them that flexibility on pay as well.
100%. I see it as recruiters. I mean, taking payroll aside, obviously we're payroll recruitment experts, but for sure, if there's two offers and they're both competitive and everyone's maxed on salary and remuneration, you've got to make a decision, and one can give you pay on demand and one can't. And we're absolutely, as a recruitment firm, going to sell on the benefits of that flexibility. And as you say, it's not just about attracting the best staff, but when you've got them in the door, if you're offering that and a competitor isn't, then it's also a great way of retaining that talent, which is valuable. But losing that talent to a competitor or to walk out the door is very, very expensive to replace. So I think it's a double-edged win for pay on demand users from a client perspective. Me viewing that as a recruiter rather than as a payroll professional. What
we want to do is through our technology and through our offering is to be able to sort of kill the high cost payday loan cycle. To try and get people out of having high cost borrowing to help them through a period. If there's a service and something we can offer that will help that, then that can only be good for employees, but also employers. Because once if the employees are happier, then there's less issues for the employer.
Sure. And actually, I think I mentioned this in a previous podcast. During the pandemic, we had an example of a particular contractor who couldn't get to an interview because they couldn't afford the train fare to get there, the travel to get there, because they hadn't been paid yet, but they'd finished that assignment a week before, but they're waiting to the end of the month to have that pay come in. And that was actually, directly affecting their ability to get a new job because they're waiting for that end of monthly pay cycle to access their money. Pay on demand would have solved that problem instantly in that particular example. And as a recruiter, we I guess we get exposed to different things. Interestingly, you mentioned a 70% number. I mean, there are lots of statistics out there that talk about financial wellness at the minute. And I read a slightly different stat, but mine was that 40% of people in Britain at the minute, particularly those, and I think you mentioned retail and hospitality. So it's those in nursing, hospitality and retail sectors are often only one single pay slip away or paycheck away from severe financial difficulty. So you mentioned 70%, I think, of people have some form of credit, but with the overwhelming majority of employers paying employees in arrears, often on a monthly cycle, as we've talked about, it can be really, really difficult because employees are oscillating between, being cash rich on payday, and they've got to make that last then the whole month, and that can be very, very challenging. And I think you mentioned it briefly, Brian, certainly David mentioned it in detail when I spoke with him. Do you think then that pay on demand could finally see the end of what is a very traditional monthly pay cycle we have in the UK? Could it be the dissolution of the monthly pay cycle as we see it? Or do you maybe it won't have that much of an impact? I don't know, but I would love to get your view on how you see that monthly pay cycle, because it seems to be we have it in the UK due to habit rather than any other major reason. And maybe I'm wrong that I'm a recruiter talking about payroll, so you, by all means correct me, but that's how I'm viewing it.
No, I think you're right, Nick, and it was always, it was the drive. If you think maybe you talked about how things have changed from when I started in payroll, there was much more common weekly, 2 weekly payrolls. And then there was the big drive over perhaps the last 20, 30 years to move everyone to be paid on a monthly cycle. And that was maybe a lot of that was driven by it was easier for the employer rather than easier for the employee. But now, if you have the ability to take your pay when you need it, then the employer can still keep the monthly pay cycle, because you'll still need to run a payroll, even in an on-demand world. But it just means the employee has got that flexibility to be paid as often as they wish. If someone's quite happy and works really well on, I get my pay once a month, I know exactly what I do with it and when I spend it, then monthly works for them. But if you have someone with, who's perhaps much more used to getting money on a much more regular basis, then they can take their money once a week or whenever they need it. I think when everyone looks at on-demand pay, we always think, it's the my fridge is just broken down and I need to go and buy a new fridge. I need an emergency pot of cash that I don't have. I'll use my on-demand pay for this. What we're finding is that it's being much more used for regular expenditure, like the groceries, like sort of regular shopping, especially from some of our customers and studies on usage in the US. So that was always a very interesting thing for me, because I had always seen it's something's broken, I need to go out and buy something now, I need funds, how can I get that? And that's obviously always going to work in an on-demand basis, but the way people who are using it in very different ways.
Have you ever asked yourself, how can I recruit payroll staff effectively? Please don't give up on your recruitment project just yet. Here at JGA Payroll Recruitment, we appreciate the difficulties associated with attracting, recruiting, and retaining top payroll talent. We also understand just how costly a poor payroll hire can be. JGA Recruitment are a niche payroll recruitment agency who will partner with you to resource payroll candidates who will improve both the accuracy and efficiency of your payroll department. Contact us today on 01727 800 377 or visit jgarecruitment.com to find out more.
The narrative has changed as well post-pandemic. So I know we were talking about on-demand pay. I had an interview, David, pre-pandemic, right? But so this technology has been there for some time, and not really talking about the history of it necessarily, but post-pandemic, we're in a new culture now of choice, whether you want to choose to work from home, whether you want to choose to go into the office, choosing hours, flexibility. For me, it's not saying you can't stick to your monthly pay cycle if you wish, but it's giving employees more choice. And if they want to be able to access it, then why not give them that choice? That's what everyone is demanding now. We want to look after our employees. When we have better employee engagement, we know results in better business performance, better happiness in personal lives as well. So, for me, aside from potentially the compliance complexities of how this works, and that's not my area of expertise, but purely looking at it from a choice perspective, it seems to make absolute sense. And as you say, if it can mean that employees are going to be less reliant on high street short-term loans because they can access real-time pay to enable them to be paid when they need it, then that's a huge benefit for wellness, which then again links to employee performance and the way that they work and productivity. So I think it's a fantastic thing, but from a compliance angle, we're getting lots of questions, particularly here in the UK, Brian, about how this could work. Is it a loan? Tell us a little bit about the mechanics of how pay on demand or on-demand pay would work in the UK. And with that in mind, what does the future look like here in the UK and further afield?
So I think this is one area where we're still building the solution for the UK, because there are perhaps the legislative difficulties and then with HMRC, with the ITI reporting that needs to be sort of worked through. But we're still working through in conjunction with our product teams and compliance teams to how that solution will work. But we're certainly aiming to have it launched next year in the UK, because it's something that, right, as I've said, we know we've got customers who are desperate for it to happen, and the launch and the uptake in the US and Canada has been very successful. So we know there is a market for the product once we launch it.
So if I was to get you to get that crystal ball out, Brian, let's say that everything goes through smoothly next year, you've agreed all the compliance elements to it, it's all fine from an RTI perspective. What does the future hold for on-demand pay? If you were to predict it maybe 3 years from now, or by all means pick your own window, just as someone who's working in this space at a senior global level, I'd love to get your view on how you see the future of payroll in relation to on-demand pay.
And it will be the same with any new technology or any new service or any new product in a market. Once the first person does it and cracks those difficult questions, then other people see the way to do it. And I think that perhaps we'll be the leader in that market in offering the true on-demand net pay in the UK. But I think a lot of other providers and service software providers will probably follow along very similar routes to us.
Yeah, sure.
Especially if we can see the same rates of uptake in the UK once we can offer it.
It's like the Roger Bannister 4-minute mile, right? So couldn't break it, and when it's done, everyone then follows suits, and it's broken again and again. I can see that happening here for sure once we get those complexities ironed out. So taking things away from pay on demand for a moment, you mentioned earlier that Ceridian is all about the customer, very customer-centric business, and actually payroll as an industry is very customer service orientated. What are some of the customer payroll challenges or questions then that you're being asked at the moment at Ceridian that isn't about on-demand pay? But what is the most common kind of challenge, I guess, that you are often looking to overcome at Ceridian as a payroll provider?
It's being able to communicate with a business's employees using whatever tools we have at their ability to give them, especially during pandemic, where people were maybe, not all working in traditional their workspaces, so they weren't office based and they weren't working, but employers still had to communicate with their employees, and we used several different methods using Dayforce to be able to help build the communications, but also to allow employees to then inform their employers on COVID status, whether they had tested positive. It allowed businesses to make that process much smoother. I think now we're getting to the end of COVID. Furloughs just ended. The end of COVID, that's maybe wishful thinking, but certainly, the furlough scheme has ended. So a lot of payroll organizations are getting a bit more back to normal. Everything's starting to open up. So we're now in a position of starting to just normalize payroll operations with our customers and moving away from some of the temporary practices that have been brought in over the last year and a half, 2 years.
Interestingly, and Ceridian weren't alone in this, but the ability for payroll providers like yourselves and the in-house payroll professionals to pivot as fast as they did during lockdowns, be able to process payroll from home when, let's be honest, a lot of people didn't think that was a function that could operate from home for various reasons. What surprised you the most, or how did you feel making that pivot? Do you think it's been a real positive change in terms of the way that payroll is now viewed, in terms of the way that they were able to pivot? Or, what was your experience now coming out of COVID in inverted commas, certainly coming out of lockdown and some of the restrictions and the abilities to work from home, which we didn't know was possible? What's your experience been, and what's your outlook now as we are starting to move away?
So I will freely admit, and have done on several occasions in the past year or so, that I was probably one of those dinosaurs that in the past would have said, if you're working in payroll, we all have to be in the same office. We all have to be in the same space, because we need to be able to have that regular communication. We need to be able to speak to each other. So payrollers can't, on a very regular basis work from home. It needs to be office based. Now, like everyone else, at the drop of a hat last March, that all changed and we just had to do it. So I very much changed my opinion on whether payroll can be delivered virtually or not. At Ceridian, we've delivered some huge projects working virtually, when before everything would have been done on the customer site in the same room, and there's been absolutely no detriment to the quality of the work that we're giving the customer. And the feedback has been along those lines. So I think now it's opened up. If I think about myself as a recruiter and I'm coming to you, Nick, to say, I need people for my team at Ceridian, I'm not looking for people within a 10-mile radius of Glasgow anymore. If they're in the UK, great. If they're somewhere else, provided we bear in mind all the intricacies about employing people in a different country, but if they're based in the UK, then they can work for Ceridian, they can work for me. So I've expanded my talent pool as a hiring manager massively, just from that change of thinking about, can we do payroll remotely, to, well, we have to do payroll remotely and we can make it work, and make it work very well.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a fantastic example. And as you say, it expands that talent pool at a time where talent has never been at more of a premium, particularly within payroll. So that's, the timing is very good in that sense. But it's really interesting insight to hear that you've changed your own mindset. As you said, without using your own words, you find yourself, you're a bit of a dinosaur in terms of how you viewed this, but actually you've come full circle now, because you are now very open about taking talent from further afield. I think that's great. My final question then, before we open the vault, it's again focused on the future of payroll. It's something that I always like to talk about on the podcast, because it appears to me, particularly now that technology, and Ceridian consider themselves a technology business, it's evolving faster now than it seems to have ever been evolving. Maybe that's not the case. That's certainly how it appears to me. Whether we're talking about robotic process automation, whether we're talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning solutions now coming to the market, it's advancing so fast. It's almost quicker than we were able to report on it. So I'd love to know from your perspective, Brian, as someone who's right at the cutting edge of payroll, but also working for a cutting edge technology business, someone who's very experienced in both the traditional evolutionary payroll process we mentioned earlier, maybe not the abacus, but certainly you've been in it for a long time and you've seen manual processes work. You've been in this industry for a long time. What do you think the future of payroll is going to look like? I'm not necessarily talking about on-demand pays, we've covered that element, but from a technological perspective and a process perspective, what will the future of payroll look like in, say, 5 years? And do you think it's a positive outlook? Would it be rosy for us? Should we be looking forward to it?
I think it's always a difficult question, because if you think about, 5 years ago, what's changed? Could you have predicted what we're doing now 5 years ago? I think I would certainly struggle. And if I could predict 5 years in the future, I'd be a richer man than I am currently. But I think with any technological advances, because any advances are going to be around technology, and that's what's going to make everyone's jobs different. There will be more automation. There will be less processes that we need to step into. But I think there is always going to be, at some part in the process, there's going to be a human touch needed now. A human brain, as fantastic as the computer is, a human brain can see when something doesn't look right straight away. And that's why in payroll, I think you always need, if you've got people working on payroll, they need to be able to understand how payroll works and not just how the computer works that does the payroll, so that when they look at something, they can tell straight away there's something not right about that.
They can contextualize the data, can't they? Yep. That's
There's probably a specific computer programming term for doing that, and it's going to be very difficult to actually build. But whether it's the people will be working on exception processing or reasonableness processing and looking at that side of things rather than just doing the tasks themselves, I think it can only be a good thing that it will allow us to concentrate on the softer parts of the work as well.
Do you think things like blockchain technology, cryptocurrency payments, do you think that's something we might see in the next 5 years? Do you think that's still further ahead, or maybe it'll never come into play? It's kind of a piece of tech that we're not seeing yet, but we know it's, a lot of technology businesses, maybe outside of payroll, are certainly working on that kind of tech. Do you see those solutions coming to the market in the near future?
I personally think that's certainly not a near future item. I think until, if we think about payroll and how much funds are dispersed at the back end of payroll, until we have solutions that are workable for the majority of people, then I don't think that's going to impact that part of payroll. Whether money movement becomes totally different as a result of new technologies, then I think that will be where that will impact payroll.
Sure.
Rather than the end part of payroll process.
More like the cross-border payment piece.
Yep.
The speed of that, for sure. So listen, we're going to open the vault.
Entering the vault.
Some quick, short, sharp questions for you, Brian. So number one piece of advice you would give to someone working in payroll right now?
I would tell them to strap themselves in for the ride and enjoy it. I've worked in payroll now, over 20 years, well over 20 years, and it's a fantastically changeable experience. You never have the same day twice, and you can really find yourself pushing almost stuff that can really be enjoyable. I want to find these people that leave school and want to work in payroll. I want payroll to be a career. The payroll industry's made big steps forward to try and get itself out there. Some of the pushing LinkedIn to recognize payroll as an industry on its own, will maybe help that. But I want people to see payroll as a career path and not just a stepping stone to, working in HR or doing something else.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And obviously the opportunities now, as we see it as a recruitment firm, right? It's not just payroll administrator through to payroll manager. And there's nothing wrong with that career path, but you can go into any element of payroll now, whether it's payroll development, software development, payroll sales, you can go into implementation, project management, payroll tutoring, teaching, and all those different things. I think it's a much more exciting proposition now than it's ever been before. And as you talk about, it takes in the best of tech, best of payroll, all the different things that come into it. If you're mathematically minded, it can suit you. If you're technology focused, it can suit you. I think it's a really exciting time now. I totally agree. We need to get payroll as an industry on LinkedIn. I've seen that movement get a little bit of backing behind it from the community. I hope that continues, and we'll watch this space.
And I think globally as well, payroll's now not a world that's static. There's the opportunity to be involved on a global basis in what you do as well. So that can be a massive attraction for some people when you're maybe getting involved in a payroll that involves working with lots of different cultures and lots of different people.
100%. So question 2, if you had the power of foresight and you could change the entire payroll industry with one action or improvement, what would that action or improvement be?
If it would be something as simple as eradicate errors in the payroll process. Payroll is massively emotive to people. It's great when you get it right, but when you get it wrong, it can be very difficult for someone on the receiving end of that as well. So I think I'd like to improve accuracy, and then you're talking about removing human error, and that can sometimes be difficult, because where you've got a process with a human in it, you might always get some sort of error.
Interestingly, though, I think payroll is one of the only industries I can think of where if you do get it absolutely right, it just means that no one calls you, no one tells you. It's a good thing, because it's silent, not because no one's phoning you to say it's wrong, which is a little bit different to other industries, perhaps, where you actually get lots of accolades and high fives if something goes right. Payroll is just you welcome with silence, which I think is quite interesting.
And that's something that the payroll industry needs to get better at doing as well. We need to get better at recognising our successes, and our successes are at the end of the payroll cycle. I was going to say at the end of the month. At the end of the payroll cycle, have we paid people correctly? If we have, that is our job. We've done a fantastic thing, and not to get too hung up on doing that.
And my last question, in hindsight, you've got to say over 20 years in payroll, Brian, what's the one thing you now know that you wish you had known when you began your payroll career?
I think the career word there is important. I think I wish I had known at the start of it that it was a career. I spent too long in payroll looking to get out of payroll. And, that sounds like a funny thing to say, but it was, well, I'm doing this now. I want to move on. I'm working in HR. I'm working in finance. What else can I do without focusing on where payroll career can take you? And I'm very happy. I'm very pleased that I've worked hard in payroll over 20 years, and now in a role that's fantastic for a company that's great to work for. But I think just being focused on payroll as a career would have been something really interesting, and also to the knowledge or the insight you want to give everyone is make sure that you do celebrate your successes, and don't. In payroll, I think mistakes can sometimes get a little bit of focus the wrong way. We're not brain surgeons. If we make a mistake, no one's going to die. Okay, people will get paid wrongly, but we can fix them. I've yet to come across a mistake in my payroll career that can't be fixed.
Sure.
So, make your mistakes, learn from them, and grow from there.
I think I had a similar conundrum in my own career. I work in recruitment, but it took me some time to come to terms with the fact that I worked in recruitment. I think this was just when I started, it was just a stopgap. It was just because, I was looking for something else. And it was only really when I embraced it, when actually I'm quite good at this and I actually enjoy it, and admitting that I enjoyed it, and admitting that I wanted to progress in this industry. It was only then that I actually managed to progress. And I think if you're always looking to get out, you'll stagnate potentially, but if you embrace what you do and learn to love it, then that's when the whole world of opportunity for me opens up. And I think you're a great example of that, Brian, because look where you've got to now. You're really a fantastic position with one of the most innovative payroll businesses in the world, global. And I think that must have come at some point when you've opened up that opportunity to go, you know what, this is my career, this is my profession, I'm going to own it. And you've absolutely done that with aplomb. So for me, that was something that happened in my own journey. I had to accept recruitment as my industry, and I'm sure there's many people listening to this that need to go, actually, payroll is a great career choice for me, and I can really develop and achieve everything I want to achieve within this industry. And hopefully, if anyone's listening to this, if they can just have that sort of microphone drop moment now to go, right, I'm going to own this, then I think we're going to really help a lot of people along their career trajectories as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So it's been an absolute pleasure. I could talk to you for a long, long time. We've known each other. There's probably lots of other ground we could cover, Brian, but we are unfortunately almost out of time. What I'd like to find out, though, is some of the links that people who are listening to this, they want to find out more about Ceridian, want to find out more about yourself. I know that you've got an exciting event coming up, which is Ceridian World Tour in London, which is on November the 30th. It's an in-person or a virtual event, and I will put a link to that event in the episode notes. If you're interested in the Ceridian World Tour, please do take a look at the episode notes. You can click straight through and sign up about that. But are there any other links you'd like to highlight on the episode while we have you, Brian?
I think I would say, have a look at our website, have a look at Ceridian's website, see what we're doing globally, see what our products are doing. Reach out on LinkedIn, to me, if anyone wants to have a discussion about anything payroll related, I'll happily talk about payroll for as long as anyone lets me. And thank you for letting me speak to you about payroll today, Nick. So,
my absolute pleasure.
For payroll, keep on top of what's happening. Be inquisitive, ask questions, and then that's where the good stuff starts to happen.
Fantastic. Well, I will, of course, put Brian's LinkedIn address on the episode notes as well. So if you do want to connect with Brian, again, jump through to episode notes. You can click straight through to Brian to make that connection request on LinkedIn. I will also put some links in there to Ceridian's website, which is ceridian.com. You can look at the intelligence at work, all about the things that Ceridian are doing, which are innovative, about payroll. A link to that World Tour in London, which I definitely recommend you all sign up for. It's on the 30th of November, so put it in your calendars now. And I'll also put a separate link in there all about the Dayforce wallet. We've talked a lot about Pay on Demand today. If you want to find out more about it, please do click through the episode notes and click on the dayforcewallet.com link. Please remember that if you have a payroll-related vacancy that you need some support with, then please do give myself a call. I'm the founder of JJ Recruitment. We're a specialist payroll recruitment firm. You can reach either myself or any of my colleagues at jjrecruitment.com or give any of my team a call on 01727 800 377. Just leaves me to say a huge thank you, Brian, for joining me today on the Payroll Podcast. I look forward to bringing you all the next episode real soon. Thank you very much. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Payroll Podcast with Nick Day of JGA Recruitment. If you need help with a current payroll vacancy, then please get in touch with Nick and his team. All contact details can be found in the episode notes. In the meantime, to make sure you never miss a future episode, please subscribe to the show through any of your favorite podcast channels. Till next time.